Hi, everybody. I wanted to provide you with one more resource to help you start preparing for the fall 2021 semester. As you know, I've done a lot of research on first-year seminar and first-year students, and I wanted to provide a little bit of extra research out there for you. I did a brief literature review of a book to help you kind of situate yourself in the course and in the field of first-year studies so you can get a better understanding of what do we know about first-year students and how can you approach your classes. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so in the literature, it's been identified that there are 3 critical pieces that you need to develop in the first couple of weeks and throughout your first-year seminar course to support the first-year students. So within the first couple of weeks, you need to discuss the positive impact of the transition experience. You also want to normalize the transition experience. And from day 1 all the way through the end of the course, you want to develop or foster a sense of community. All right, so in the literature, it's been identified that it is actually important for us to discuss the positive impact of the transition with our students. This goes hand in hand with the literature that has come out in the last 10 years or so about growth mindset and helping our students understanding that challenging times actually are times of great growth, and that's a good thing, right? So FYS really is the cornerstone of intentionally integrating experience for our first-year students. It's a comprehensive and integrated experience. It also helps us to identify those high-risk students, such as those identified in the literature, those who come from underrepresented populations, those who are first-gen students, those who might come from lower income. There's a whole host of high-risk students that we're aware of. But also, high-risk students are those who are just not transitioning well. They're not seeing themselves in the institution. And often students who come from underrepresented or diverse populations or first-gen populations struggle to see themselves in the institution. And if students recognize that they're not equipped to succeed or they don't have enough support from the institution, they're more likely to drop out. So what can you do the first few weeks of class? This is the critical time when students are figuring out whether they belong or not. Usually this takes place between the first 3 to 5 weeks. We want to tell our students, disclose to them that transition studies is an actual field of academic research, believe it or not. This is something that we're aware of and we study, and we hope to help better our students' experience transitioning into college. And this is important for you to share with them. Most major institutions in the United States and also internationally have a first-year seminar course to help their students transition. So this is a great piece of information for the first day of class. You also want to provide intentional communication about the benefits of the transition experience. What will students expect to gain from this? Why is this a positive thing? And maybe talk about some of the opportunities for growth that are going to happen. They're going to be able to better manage their time. They're going to be able to take care of their basic needs. They're going to learn how to budget. They're going to learn how to start preparing for their future career, etc. We want to detail that change is an opportunity. It's not a threat. Often our students are scared of the college experience. And in my own research, I found that they are consistently told this by their middle school and high school teachers that, college faculty is not supportive. You have to do everything on your own. You're expected to be independent and act like an adult, which of course is true, but we're also there to support them on the journey. And they often develop this misconception that college and college professors are scary. And so we really want to intentionally give them the message that we're here not to make them fail, but to support them. And how can we do that? So discuss your role as a supportive instructor. Discuss the role of the peer leader if you are assigned one, and the role of other campus resources. So those are all important ways that we can support our students and develop a positive mindset about the transition to college so it doesn't seem so scary to them. Then we also want to normalize the transition experience. So in week 2 of the course, there is an activity for a round table. And we can talk about types of activities that we can do with this in a minute. But it's really a space for our students to start normalizing their conversation about the transition experience. We want students to understand that the struggle is real, and we're aware that it is real, and that's why we're there to help them. So this list that I've compiled is definitely not comprehensive of all of the issues that our students might be dealing with at one time or at many times throughout the semester. But it's a pretty good categorization of the types of issues that our students might be dealing with. 2 issues that I do want to note that I didn't include on here and I should have would be homelessness, poverty, and food disparity are also issues that our students might be struggling with. So that kind of ties into students paying their own way through college. So what I found in my own dissertation research is that many of our students are relying on scholarships and financial aid and having to pay their own way through college in order to be able to attend Reinhardt. And so keeping that in the back of your head about how they're juggling all of this is really important. And sometimes they might not know how to take care of their basic needs. And so they might not realize, hey, I actually need to be eating breakfast before class, or, I should be sleeping at 10 o'clock instead of 4 in the morning. So taking care of their basic needs can be a challenge for them. And that goes into leaving home and being homesick. So some of these students have never left home before. It's the first time that they're leaving home, and they might be homesick, and they might be traveling from out of state or out of country to attend Reinhardt. And usually homesickness hits about week 2, week 3. Sometimes by the time week 5, students are really struggling with homesickness, and it's a real thing, and it's something that we need to be aware of. Other students, maybe commuter students, might be struggling with issues by living at home. There might be some family conflicts. There might be issues with having to take care of dependents or take care of family members while also attending college. They might be struggling with being a commuter and having car issues and that sort of thing, and being afraid that their professors might not believe them, that they're actually having car trouble. So living at home also brings a whole host of issues to our students. And on that note, they might be struggling with conflict with family, friends, or roommates if they're staying on campus. And this might be something that was ongoing, that has been going on throughout their past with family conflicts or conflicts with their peers, or this might be something new. And a new idea that I found in my dissertation research is that some students, while they're starting to focus more on their studies, they're kind of breaking away or branching out from their family and friends because they have to all of a sudden prioritize academics over these relationships that they could focus on more in high school because they had more time built into their days to do so. And so this can be very challenging and a very isolating experience for some of our students. And in terms of isolation, we also know that many of our students are struggling with mental health issues. We know that through anecdotal experience in the classroom, and those of us who have already taught FYS have seen probably more and more of that become an issue in the last few years. And also in the research, we found that more and more young people are dealing with mental health issues, and we're also more aware of mental health issues. And so we're not quite sure what this next round of students the types of challenges that they're going to struggle with. We do have some sort of baseline understanding. They're coming out of the pandemic and they already went through a lot, and they've had to learn to be resilient, but we don't know the type of issues that they're going to be struggling with. So always keep that back in your mind. If you see a student who is struggling, don't hesitate to help that student, because sometimes it's too late if you don't. So get that student to the right resources as soon as you can if you have any type of red flags that go off. Something that our students struggle with is learning how to navigate the campus. They just might not know where to go. Hopefully with orientation being in person this year, that will facilitate that. But being a commuter, oftentimes they don't come to campus outside of orientation to explore the campus. And so they might not know where to go that first day, and they're overwhelmed and they're scared. Another issue that we see, and this is often more commonly found in the literature in first gen or underrepresented student populations are students who feel like they don't belong or they are an imposter. So for whatever reason, they might feel like it's a mistake that they were accepted into the institution, or they might get into the institution and, you know, hear all this new academic language we're using, like the registrar office and things like that. And that might kind of throw them off and make them feel like I'm not sure if I'm really made for this college experience. And often we also see that in our students who are higher functioning students who are intelligent but lack the self-confidence in their ability. And so they start to question whether or not they belong in the institution, and that can be problematic. Something else to be aware of is that some students actually go through culture shock. So if they're from an underrepresented or diverse community that is not represented at Reinhardt, or if they're coming in from a more or less diverse experience than high school, they might develop culture shock, and they might have difficulty understanding diverse viewpoints, even though this actually is a critical piece for their successful transition. So sometimes it takes them a while to get used to this new environment. Being a transfer student is another category of students. There's more research out there about transfer students, but you kind of want to approach the topic as they've already engaged somewhat in the college experience. They're not a traditional student who is just coming into the university the first time. So they might not be as overwhelmed or nervous as some of our first-year students or traditional first-year students, but they might be struggling with other things like understanding the financial aid process, registration, all that kind of stuff. So just be mindful of your transfer students and their experiences as well. Being an international student, ESOL learner, hands down, it's a challenge. We have some resources on campus, but oftentimes our students don't know where those resources are, and sometimes they struggle to do well in their classes. And you know, moving from a foreign country to the United States is already overwhelming enough as it is. So connecting those students with those resources early on with Tunji in the Center for Academic Success is going to be really, really important. All right, and along those lines about feeling like an imposter, some students actually come to college after being a high achiever or a very successful high school student, you know, all A's, academic awards and that sort of thing. And all of a sudden they find themselves struggling in college and they're not really sure why. And so this can be a very tough experience for our students, especially in terms of their confidence and seeing themselves in the institution. And so this is something to be mindful of. And along those lines, once they start struggling, many of our students don't know how to reach out to their professors. Again, they feel like we're scary, or they're intimidated, or they feel like if they do reach out to the professors, they're going to be thought of as weak or stupid. And so we have to communicate to our students. It's okay to reach out, and it's better to reach out early than when it's too late. Not having any friends on campus can be a very isolating experience as well. I know that a large portion of our students actually come from surrounding communities, and often these communities are smaller towns or smaller cities where students might have known the same people growing up their entire life. And so coming to a new institution is difficult because they don't know their professors, they don't know any friends, and that's a very isolating experience for them. The same holds true for other students who are transferring from out of state or out of country. Unless they have a large group of students coming from their high school into Reinhardt, which is probably unlikely, they won't know many people on campus. So early connections with their peers in FYS and through orientation and through athletics is really important. I mentioned this before, many students are just going to come in scared and nervous. They don't understand the way the institution works. For example, they might not understand how financial aid works. Their parents might not be able to help them through that, especially if they're a first-gen student. They might just not have the awareness that they need in order to navigate their transition easily. So that's something to be mindful of. And finally, a big challenge for our first-year students is balancing this new sense of freedom that they have and learning how to manage their time with that freedom. So if you think about the high school experience, is very structured. They go to the same classes every day. They know when their free time is. They know when they have to allocate time for athletics or for work or for homework, because it's a very consistent schedule. College is not a consistent schedule. It changes from semester to semester. It changed throughout the pandemic. It changed based on their athletic schedules, their work schedules, etc. So students are trying to grapple with understanding how to manage their time in an environment that's not structured for them. They have to learn how to structure out their time on their own. And this can be a big challenge for them. And it goes back into taking care of their basic needs, because often students will procrastinate and stay up until way too late, not get enough sleep, skip breakfast, that kind of stuff, and that's really not good for their physical health. All right, so the big most important retention piece that has been overwhelmingly identified in the literature for many years now is developing a sense of community. This is such an important part of helping our students transition. And in fact, it's not just for our first-year students, but there's actually, in the research, there have been identified multiple transitions in the college experience. So like the sophomore transition, the transition as a senior and going into the workforce, and of course the first-year transition. And so sense of community is really important. So what are some things that you can do in those first couple of days and throughout the semester to help develop the sense of community? You want to create a literal safe space for your students. Again, think about the mindset that students have coming into the institution. They're scared, they're overwhelmed, they don't know anybody, they're dealing with all of this whole range of personal issues that they're going through. They're really looking for a safe space to learn and to be accepted. And this is really important, especially now that we're going back to face-to-face teaching. They want to be able to see that what they're doing is worth their time. And so creating a literal safe space for students to want to go to is going to be very important. So providing a homeroom style course, like that would be familiar to them, like in high school, where they feel comfortable, they look forward to seeing their friends and you every day in class. It's a positive experience. And something that was interesting in the literature that I reviewed for you is that there's something called a strengths development model. And so this model helps students develop their own sense of belonging with 4 elements. So the first one would be to provide membership. You want to give students a feeling that they belong in your classroom. And this happens from day 1. You want to give them ownership. You'll want to allow them to have a voice in class and also in discussion posts, but you never want to force their voice. So you don't want to call on students randomly unless they're willing to voice their opinion if they're not comfortable. That will definitely shut down some barriers, especially in your more introverted students who might not want to offer their opinions in the classroom, but you see maybe they're offering their opinions really well in the discussion post. So calling them randomly and putting them on the spot is not a great way to develop a sense of community in your classroom. I would not suggest it. To foster relationships, you definitely want to provide those positive interactions with you and other students. So think about that, like I mentioned before. Don't just put students on the spot. What are other types of positive interactions you can have with your students? And you want to help them develop partnerships with each other. And we're going to work on doing this in their final project, where they're working as a group towards a common goal, and doing so by attending to their strengths, their individual strengths, when they play the different role that they're going to play in that game. So those are some ways that you can foster a sense of community. And other ways that you can do it is you want to assess your role. So what is your approach to teaching FYS? And I think first and foremost, you should consider yourself as a facilitator, an advisor, or a mentor. You are a resource to them. Yes, you're a content expert, many of you in your own specific fields. And I'm a content expert in first year in transition studies. However, that doesn't mean that I should act like I am the boss in the classroom. It's more about facilitating conversations, advising them, and mentoring them on the resources and the skills that they need to be successful in college. You also want to understand that I talked about the positive growth mindset and really discussing the importance of the transition period. But you also need to think that the faculty mindset of your student's ability is often more impactful on the student than their own growth mindsets. So in other words, if you believe in your students, they will believe in themselves. If you expect them to believe in yourself, but you act and you provide feedback in a way that shows that you don't believe in them, they won't be able to easily develop a positive mindset. You also want to recognize that no one is immune to bias. Even the most seasoned instructors, we often enter the classroom with a certain set of biases. So you really want to examine your own attitude towards teaching and towards first-year students. I gave you the example in our in-person meeting already of a student who fell asleep on day one of the spring 2021 semester. And obviously, the first instinct is to be upset and feel like you're being disrespected and just wondering why would a student fall asleep on the first day. But through conversations, we were able to understand that he was not taking care of his basic needs and he was struggling with some mental health issues that affected him to be able to stay awake. And so we had a really positive conversation about that. But I could have obviously been very upset, and that conversation would have gone a whole different direction, and it would not have been a positive experience for the student. On that note, you want to recognize the role of power and privilege in the classroom. Students are automatically at a disadvantage because you hold the power in the classroom. You are the expert. You hold power over the gradebook and over the content that they learn and the learning experiences that they engage in. So you really want to think about, do you want this to be a shared power in the classroom? Do you want students to be able to participate in your classroom on equal terms? And if not, what do you want your classroom to look like? So that's something really important for you to think about. But you also want to think about, because you do hold a role of power and privilege, you want to treat your students with dignity in class and in your feedback. You want to provide inclusive pedagogy. So at its heart is compassion. You want to be willing to listen, be slow to assume, and be quick to facilitate. I think the most important aspect or quality that a teacher or instructor should have is compassion. You want to encourage multiple perspectives and encourage diverse conversations. And this is actually a critical piece of retention and transition studies, is helping students develop multiple perspectives and listen to multiple perspectives. And that helps them to see themselves in the institution and see others in the institution. You want to provide timely feedback and make it instructive and positive. So you want it to help them grow, but you also want to provide positive feedback in addition to maybe some suggestions of what to do better in the future. We talked about this a lot before, but you want to provide active learning strategies and varied approaches to your teaching. So every day should not be the same. You definitely want to mix it up so students look forward to coming to class. You know, although students know what's coming up in the course calendar and the topics that are going to be covered for that particular week, they don't know what's in your bag of tricks. So one day you might play a game in class, another day you might have a discussion, another day you might have a mini lecture. So keep them guessing so they'll want to look forward to coming to your class. You want to have frequent interactions with your students outside of class, so email check-ins, offering office hours. Now, as many of you are adjuncts, you are not required to hold office hours, but I would definitely suggest letting students know that you have office hours by appointment, and those could be virtual or in person. I would definitely suggest having students sign up for office hours in the beginning of the semester once you guys kind of get settled, and that way you have a chance to speak with each one of your students throughout the semester. And you want to elicit your help of the peer leaders. So if you have a peer leader in your classroom, they can organize outside activities if they have the time and willingness to do so, to get together, like go meet for coffee with their students one day, or go to, you know, the football game together and things like that. And if you can attend campus events, that's great. Obviously, you're not required to, but if you have the time to, I know many of you do have families. You know, try to see if you can go, and it helps students be able to see you out there. You want to validate your students. You want them to know, and you want to say to them that they deserve a place in this classroom, no matter what they overcame to get to this point. They're all on equal ground now. They're all treated the same. They are a student in your classroom, and they deserve a place in your classroom. And finally, you want to be aware of your students' emotional needs depending on who they are and where they come from. So you do want to kind of do a little bit of research on your students, maybe through a survey or just observationally through your discussions, and find out, are your students a commuter? Do they live on campus? Are they a first-gen student? Are they from an underrepresented population? Are they a transfer student? Do they have diverse learning capabilities or diverse learning needs that you need to account for? So something you can do briefly on the first day of class is do a quick online survey. And that will help you kind of read your class and help you better design activities that support all your different needs for your students. So just to review the references, this is the book that I reviewed for you. It is a research-based approach to college student success. It's provided by the University of South Carolina, and they host the National Resource Center for the First Year Experience and Students in Transition. It is known internationally as one of the most important centers for understanding the first year experience and the transition to college and throughout college. So I would highly suggest, if you have time over the summer, just poke around at their website and see what literature is out there, what type of events are out there, what kind of books or articles they suggest. So even if you don't read any, it's interesting to see that this is actually a very important field. It's still a growing field, but it's a well-established field. And so that can help you deliver some of that information to your students as well. So I hope that this has been helpful for you, and I think it will help you prepare your mindset of going into the fall semester of the approach that you should take from day one to prepare yourself. And I think this information is better delivered now than on the Friday before we start classes. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. And if not, you guys enjoy the rest of your summer, and I'll see you soon.